then we're going to spin up a site and talk a little bit about how Pantheon works and how it's different. And then we're going to just kind of start building a site and run a little workflow demonstration and share some Drupal 7 best practices for following our deployment pipeline. So let's begin with the recommendations. First we have is to install Drush, install Git, install Terminus, and then also make sure that your site is ready with, make sure that your account has SSH keys loaded into it that are associated with the machine that you'll be developing on.
And if that sounds intimidating, it's actually pretty straightforward. We have a few links on our help desk that can help you get started with that.
Yeah, so if you're running a Mac, the easiest way to install Drush is to brew install Drush. If you are running on a PC, there's a nice link in this article to install by an exe installer. And then also on Linux, the standard way is to do it via pair. The Terminus is a Pantheon CLI, which will enable us to interact with our account and our dashboard also from the command line. So Drush and Terminus are really just ways to speed up your development so that you can really not have to go back around the interface and do a lot of clicking when you're developing your Drupal site. Finally, the last two links are to our help desk articles for generating and loading SSH keys. SSH is just a way for us to authenticate your machine against your account.
And that's nice because whenever you're interacting with Pantheon, you don't have to input your password each time. It'll just look for your private key. Mm-hmm. You'll put your public key on your account dashboard. So those are kind of prerequisites to kind of this presentation.
To working really fast. Now this presentation will be recorded and shared so that if you want to follow along again later, you can definitely do that. But Drush for Drupal development is a recommendation that basically everyone makes for developing their website. So now we're going to spin up a site, and to follow along, please go to your dashboard, which is at dashboard.getpantheon.com.
I also put the link in the chat window as well.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
And when you land at your dashboard, you will should see a link to create a new site. First stop real quick, we're going to look at the account. This is where you can change any of your information, give yourself a new password, and then also upload the SSH keys that we described creating. So I'm going to click Create a New Site. Now the site that I'm going to make today is a site that will be internal to Pantheon for managing our attendance and participation at different community events. This will be like the Drupal Camp Phoenix, where, yeah, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, all right. So I'm going to give it a name. Whoa, that didn't work. Community events. And you'll notice that as I type, it automatically prescribes the site development URL as communityevents.gotpantheon.com.
And every plan comes with 3 environments. So you'll actually, as soon as you spin up this new site, you'll have 3 different URLs for each environment. It'll be dev-sitename.gotpantheon.com, test-sitename, and live-sitename. Mm-hmm. So you have those 3 environments.
Yeah, so I chose to just develop based on core Drupal 7. We have a whole host of Drupal community distributions on the platform as well. But for the purposes of this site, I don't really need all of the extra greatness that some of these distributions come with for this specific purpose.
So in just a couple minutes, it's spinning up your new site and all of the pieces that it needs.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some examples of the things that it's doing right now?
All right, so I have a link in the presentation to this How It Works article, which kind of describes our architecture, including the runtime matrix, which is where the Nginx and PHP worker are stored in a lightweight container. The edge cache and load balancer that comes with your site, so that your traffic, if you do have more than one application container, your traffic can be automatically routed depending on the load of each machine. This article has a wealth of different links to information about containers, about the content base, which is our real technical breakthrough here at Pantheon. And basically, in the background, your site, it's not creating a time loop inversion field, but it is binding your application container back to the file system mount and your database container so that your site can have content, but you're going to basically get the state-of-the-art in CMS hosting. Do you agree?
For sure. So let's see, we have a site already.
All right.
We didn't have to worry about Linux, a web server, Nginx in our case, MySQL, PHP. It's all configured and set up. And now let's look at the site dashboard here.
All right. So the site dashboard, the first thing that I'm going to do is to visit the development site. Every environment has a little link there to visit your site. And now Pantheon is automatically going to skip the next two steps to verify requirements and set up the database. Setting up the database is a time-consuming kind of pain. And since our application containers move around a little bit, we are going to automatically orchestrate the database connections between your code base and the MariaDB database.
So while Brian's filling out this form, this is basically the final step to spin up your Drupal site. He's just putting in the site name, the site email address, and then this is the maintenance account, user 1, which you'll log in to have administrative access to your site. Then once that's done, we'll choose a password, and then we'll be good to go. We'll actually have Drupal installed in the dev environment. So we've installed it on the dev environment, but the test environment and the live environment actually don't have any code deployed to them yet. So we'll get to that in a minute, but you'll see in just a couple minutes we have a new Drupal site. So there, it's done. We have a new Drupal site. So what are the next steps? Are we going to go back to our dashboard and see what else is going on the dashboard?
Yeah, let's go see what else is in the dashboard. So I'm going to clear the cache first.
And you'll notice the job indicator is basically telling you what it's done. If for some reason a job fails, you'll see a failure in that dropdown.
A question has come through about how do you update Drupal core?
That's a great question. If you go to the code tab, we're on the status tab right now. The initial commit was just 4 minutes ago, and that has the latest Drupal core. So let's say there's a new Drupal core, you'll actually see a yellow notice right there on the top of the code, and all you need to do is hit apply, and it'll apply the update. So it's basically a one-click update of Drupal core. We handle core, and you would handle any contrib modules, updating those. But in terms of core, you're all set to go. Just make sure that that's the way that you update. Don't update with drush up. Don't replace core, because we have an optimized version of Drupal core for Pantheon.
And I'm trying to see if I have a site here that
can show an example of that.
Yeah.
There's a help desk article, actually. If you go to the help desk real quick, we can get a visual on that. just type in update Drupal core. So this is a good resource to a lot of any question you have, you can find the answer. You can see a little video there, but if you scroll down, just keep scrolling down. So you'll get a notice, something like that, and then you just click Apply Updates, and that's it.
Great. Maybe you can show us the other features on the dashboard.
Yeah. So my favorite feature, one of my favorite features, is this instant feedback mechanism, which is the Site Audit module. This is a Drush extension, or a series of Drush extensions, that will analyze your Drupal site for following various best practices. So it will tell you your database usage, look to see whether you are running multi-site. But basically, if any of the Drush commands detect that you're not following best practices, one of these blocks is going to turn yellow, and it will provide you with clear instructions for remediating the deficiency and improving the performance of your Drupal 7 site. As a customer, when this first came out, I had yellow all over the place. I had a couple in red, and I went through, fixed all the problems, and my site sped up instantaneously.
Yeah, so that's kind of the first place to look if you're having issues with your site, is the status tab. It can give you a lot of information on the state of your site.
So the next tab is the Workflow tab. This allows us to clone our database and files. We need to have other environments around in order to do that. We have a tab for PHP errors, a tab to control your custom domains. Custom domains require that you have a paid plan. And also a tab to create backups. Now backups, in order for them to be created, it says that the connection mode must be set to Git.
So how would you set the connection mode to Git?
Great. So I have, on my code tab, I have this toggle here. This toggle is only available in the development environment, where I can just click and set my connection mode up to Git.
So it's a best practice to kind of leave your site in Git. That way your backups will work. And then just if you're actually working on the server, you can switch into Sftp mode.
Yep, which is what we're going to demonstrate.
But we encourage you to commit often. So even if you're working on your server, frequently switch, make sure you commit your changes. Get it back into Git mode.
So now I can create a new backup. Paid plans also have the option to automate their backups according to a schedule. The final tab in our dashboard is the Security tab, which allows us to lock our site down, just giving a basic HTTP basic authentication username and password.
Can you also talk about the different environments, Dev, Test, Live, and just briefly explain what is multi-dev?
All right, so Dev, Test, and Live are 3 different environments, all with the same configuration. Now, best practice in application development is to always do your development and your testing on servers that are as close to equivalent with the production environment or your live environment as close as possible. Now, in our case, Dev and Test are exact replicas of the live environment, so you are always testing against the same server environment that your site will be hosted on.
And this prevents the type of problem where if you're developing on your local machine and then you deploy and then it doesn't work, oh, well, it worked on my machine. So, here you can develop directly on the dev environment, and you'll definitely want to deploy to live, but you can be assured that those are the same configuration in those environments.
So now I'm going to use the command line to do a little bit of development on my site. In order to do that, I need to, hold on a moment. Was this not public? No. Anyone with the link can view. Okay. Sorry about that, John. So in order to do that, I need to log in. So I'm going to write, since I have Terminus installed on my machine, I'm going to type in drush P off.
So right now, Brian's actually authenticating with his Pantheon credentials through Terminus. So I think he's finding his password right now.
And what is Terminus?
So Terminus is our extension to Drush, which allows you to interact with your Pantheon site through the command line. It just lets you do things a lot quicker than you might otherwise, with pointing and clicking. So Brian will start with, let's see, Drush P aliases. Since you spun up, what that's doing is, do you want to describe?
Yeah, well, since I spun up a new Drupal site, I don't have the alias for that site in my list of site aliases, so I can't really develop against it until I download those aliases and add them to my Drush directory and then clear the cache. So manually, I could go to my sites and account page, wait for the dashboard to load, click on download Drush aliases, go and find that file and move it into my Drush directory. But instead we have this nice individual command, Drush P aliases, that will do all of those steps for me.
Great. So now that you've downloaded your new alias, you're able to show all the aliases, all the sites that you're a team member of.
Yes, all of the sites that I'm a team member of on the platform. So here I've highlighted the 3 aliases for the 3 different environments so that I can use Drush to manipulate the Drupal code on any of them.
The developed Drupal sites?
Oh, sorry.
Community event?
Community event.
All right, great.
And how would you get commands for Terminus?
Great
Which
question.
commands are available?
Yeah.
So you can type drush help, or you can go to the GitHub link.
The commands for Terminus are actually located in our help desk, and those are all right here. So there's a list of commands, and then if I look at Pantheon aliases, the alias for that is P aliases.
And you can also find that just by typing drush help at the command line.
Yeah. Great question. All right, so I have my Drupal 7 site. Now, I know I've installed Drush to install different modules, but the first module I'm going to install here is the admin menu module. The admin menu is just a nice, faster way for me to be able to access my administration menus.
So I saw that you already had the link ready, but how, if I wanted to install a module, how would I find the link? What link do I put in there?
So I'm going to put in the tar.gz file. So I'm going to right-click or 2-finger tap, and then copy the link address, and then go back to that modules page, and that's where I got it from. I pasted it right in there.
Great. And again, in order for this to work, you need to be in Sftp mode.
I need to be in Sftp mode. If I'm not in Sftp mode, Drupal will warn me that I don't have FTP access to the server, and it really won't let me install this way.
And you'll also notice that you weren't asked for any credentials.
No.
We handle all that in the back end, so you don't have to put in your Sftp password.
Mm-hmm. So now, first step for me on any site is to enable that admin menu. I also like to enable the toolbar style. In order to avoid having 2 toolbars, I'm going to disable Core's toolbar, and I will also disable the overlay, which has a drush command, if you know what it is. Does anybody in the audience know what the drush command is to disable the overlay?
I think it's unsuck or something.
Unsuck.
Some people think that overlay sucks, so
Yeah.
there's a command called unsuck.
All right, so now I don't have the overlay. You'll notice that I'm just back in the backend theme, but then when I hover over any of these, that admin menu module is allowing me to just kind of access deep into the administration menu forms, as deep as I want to go, really, just by hovering, and then I can access the one that I want by a single click. Now, I have a host of other Drupal modules that I would like to install, And if I was going to do that individually, it would get really long to go back and forth between the module page, copy the link, and paste it in. So this is where the power of Drush really comes into play. I have a saved list of modules that I want to install here on my Pantheon workflow site recipe. And I'm going to copy that, enter my drush at pantheon.community.dev DL. Oh, I already had DL in my copy. And then I'm going to paste. And now what Drush is going to do is it's going to go and download all of the modules listed in here, as long as I have their module name typed in correctly.
And the first time that you do that, it'll ask for you to be sure you want to connect. That's just the first time that you connect to the server, and that adds the entry to your known host.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can just see it downloading each of these modules.
Yeah, which is awesome. A big time saver.
And all of these, since you put in the alias of your site, you're actually, even though you're running this from your local machine, where are these being downloaded?
These are being downloaded actually to my code base. Where did it go?
Community events.
There it is.
The second one there.
So if I click on Sftp connection info.
Oh, I see it. That your dashboard changed. I see a little yellow thing there.
Oh, we'll get to that in 1 second.
Okay.
So I'm going to open up my code base in my favorite Sftp client, which here is CyberDuck. Since I have my SSH key on the platform, I can just add it there and use it to log in, or I can use my dashboard password. Now I have direct access to the files because I am in SFTP mode. I can expand the code and see that cites all modules where my terminal said that all of these modules were downloaded to. Ooh, go back to CyberDuck. Is full of all of the different modules that I just downloaded.
Great.
Yeah. And this is right on the server, ready to be enabled. So let's run a drush command to enable all. Ooh, sorry about that. Button. So instead of DL, I'm going to type in en-y, and that says drush enable all of these modules and answer yes to any prompt question where it says, are you sure you want to do this?
So while it's doing that, is now a good time to commit our code?
Oh, we have a problem. This is a problem that we knew was coming. So Ari, while I'm following the instructions here, can you explain what's going on?
Sure. Well, it looked like it said you couldn't enable those modules because you didn't have a settings.php. So typically, when you install Drupal, you'll need a settings.php to connect to the database. But our customized version of Drupal core, PressFlow, optimized for performance, doesn't even use settings.php to connect to the database. So your site's already connecting to the database without that settings.php. But in order for Drush to interact with your database and enable modules, for example, you'll need to just create that settings.php. All you need to do is take the default, it's in site default, default.settings.php, and just copy that, just duplicate it. So
I did that, and now I'm just going to hit the up arrow in my terminal to bring back the last command, and then hit enter.
So again, all we did was we copied default.settings.php to settings.php.
And then it says, would you like to download these requirements, these dependencies that were not in the initial list of modules?
So that's another really nice thing about using Drush to to do this. If we were doing it through the Drupal UI, it would just tell us cannot enable this module.
Right.
But it wouldn't ask if we want to download the module. So this is just, speeds up your workflow a lot.
Right. So basically what just happened is if first I installed this awesome module filter module, and then it went through and enabled all of the modules that I told it to. So we have feeds, which I want to turn on the UI. A lot of modules come with a UI module that will not be enabled if you do this the way that I just did it. So I'm going to want to enable those ones just manually.
So question then on, will we be automating the creation of settings.php in a future version of Pantheon?
I don't think so, because we don't want settings well, that's a good question. I don't think so, because we don't want it included in the upstream Git repository, because you might be adding customizations to your settings.php, maybe custom redirects or other custom logic. So we want to make sure that you add the settings.php to your site's version control, and it's not going to be in the upstream Git repository. So it's a pretty quick step for you to just copy default.settings.php to settings.php. I think that that's kind of the reason why we wouldn't automate it, because we don't want it in the upstream version control.
Great. Thanks, Ari. So I have just enabled those couple of modules that I wanted there as well. All right. So now we can get down to the business of building our site, but before we do that, I'm going to come back to this. And Ari mentioned that this yellow text showed up in my dashboard. So whenever I download code to directories that are tracked by Git, Pantheon is going to recognize any change to any individual file and allow us to click and see the files that have changed. I can look at a list of all of the changed files, which I just, which I know is like 2,000 something. And then within there, I can actually see which lines of code had changed in that individual file.
So here you're actually adding code, so you'll see a plus at the beginning of those lines, and it will be in green. If for some reason you are removing code, it would be in red with a minus in the front.
Right, and so the diff for my default settings.php file is just that it was created.
Great.
Yep. So I can install, I'm going to write a nice descriptive commit message, install base modules and themes, create settings.php. Now hit commit.
So what is it doing right now?
It's using Git to commit that code in this development environment. And then it's just kind of making sure that the application container bindings are accurate, and then it's going to refresh the commit log.
Git is a very widely used version control system. Drupal.org, the whole Drupal project switched from Subversion to Git a while back. So, all the Drupal projects are in Git. And being in version control means you can see what your history is. You can share with your team members. You can go back, and it also allows you to kind of deploy to each environment with the push of a button. Look, sometimes we have UI issues behind the scenes. Everything has been deployed, so I'm wondering, Brian, if you should just refresh the page. Sometimes you'll notice that maybe a modal hasn't completed, or the spinner is still spinning. So, we've reported these issues to our engineering team, and they're working on fixing them. But you can see that the code was actually committed.
Yeah.
Can you actually show the commit log there? You can see the initial commit and then the new commit there.
Yes. So now anytime that I have a change that I make to my dev environment, if I want it to get into my test and my live environments, I need to commit them to code and then deploy them up the pipeline through Git. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to create the testing environment. This will basically clone the database and files. It will use a git pull command to pull the code from the development environment, and then it will deploy that out. So I now have 2 sites, my dev site here and my testing site here, and my testing site has a different URL. It has a different database. In this case, it's going to be at the same state as my development environment was when I cloned it, which will allow me to essentially log in and have everything set up the same way in my test that was in my dev. So sometimes this takes a little while. Ari, can you explain why that's happening?
Let's go back to our dashboard. Has it completed yet?
Oh, maybe it hasn't. It's taking a screenshot.
Huh.
Yes, so I noticed this yesterday actually, that sometimes during the screenshot task, your site is unresponsive.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. We'll have to talk to engineering. That's something they added recently, that screenshot job indicator.
Okay, so while we wait for that, let's do a little bit of development here. We're pretty good on time. So, like I said, anything that we want to create new, any new functionality that we want to add to our site, we need to do it in our development environment, and that is true whether we're talking about creating a new taxonomy or that was just that. Is everything okay? Oh, someone stole the airplane. Or creating a new content type. So what I'm going to start with is a new content type.
So Brian's actually going to just start building a Drupal site. He's downloaded the requisite modules that he wants, and now he's creating a content type, which should be familiar to if you've created a Drupal site before.
And as you're working on that, a question has come up around SSL. So Phil asked this question. I see that SSL is added on to the professional above plan. For smaller projects, is it recommended not to run SSL for the admin dashboard logged in section of Drupal sites?
So you can actually, whenever you're running your site on the .pantheon.com URL, HTTPS is available. So we have a wildcard cert, and you can use HTTPS. So yeah, we would recommend using HTTPS whenever you're on the any environment through the Pantheon.com URL. And then, of course, if you're doing e-commerce or something with sensitive data, then you would want a pro plan that supports SSL with a custom domain. Well, while you're setting up this community event content type, I think we had another question about custom distributions, and if it's the same process to update a custom distribution as it is to update Drupal, like just Drupal 7, vanilla Drupal 7? And the answer is yes. It's the same process, one-click update on your dashboard. So any distribution that you can choose as a start state on Pantheon, you'll be able to do that one-click update. So there are different distributions available, Panoply, Open Atrium, Plato Tipico. There's different distributions there, and you can update them with the one-click update.
The restaurant.
A restaurant distribution, yeah. So just keep in mind that we're pointing to an upstream repo, and we don't maintain those. So like the maintainer of Open Atrium will need to update their upstream, the upstream that we're pointing to. So once they make the update, then it'll be available as a one-click update on your dashboard.
Another question, what if you need to use a PHP library? We use the CAS module with the PHP CAS library. How do we get the library on our Pantheon instance?
Oh, that's a great question. So to see what's included with PHP, you can just do a quick PHP info. We have a help desk article on that, but basically you can create an empty temporary PHP file with just the one PHP info statement, and you'll be able to see everything that's included in our build of PHP. We also have a help desk article on external libraries. There's external libraries like ImageMagick and some others. The CAS library, I'm not sure about that one. If you have questions, you can open up a ticket. And it's the type of thing that either, you know, we might not include it. It might not be supported. But you can always ask, and we'll let you know if that library is supported.
One question on the development process. So let's say you have 2 developers working on changes. Is it correct that the changes are made directly on the development server, or how does that work?
So you're always going to want to make any code changes on your development environment. So that's the answer. You want to do your development in your development environment.
Right. So we have a couple of solutions to that problem, because sometimes you might be changing the same code, or if you're not communicating enough or clearly switch the connection mode from Git to Sftp, or from Sftp to Git, kind of stepping on someone's toes. So one of the solutions to that is a feature that we call multi-dev. Now, multi-dev is available to our partners on every single site that they develop, and it's also available to business plans and above.
Can you share your screen again? It looks really big on this screen. If you could minimize it or make it a little smaller.
Okay.
So,
or if you share it there, then it should fix it.
Yeah.
So one thing we didn't show on the dashboard, but maybe if we have time, we'll show is the team. Can you actually click on the team there?
Yeah.
So this shows you how easy it is to invite a new teammate. So now that he's typing in my email address, I actually will get an email inviting me, letting me know that I've been added. And now when I log into my dashboard, when I update my Drush aliases, I'll have access to the site. So basically, if you keep your site in Git mode, just make sure you pull before you push to avoid conflict. So let's say Brian's made some changes. I want to make a change. Right before I push up the change, I'll do a git pull origin master. I'll add in my change, and then I'll do a push. And then the next time that Brian wants to make a change, he'll just make sure he does a pull before he pushes. So I don't think that we're actually going into the details of Git in this webinar, but that's for a team workflow, you'll want to make sure that you take advantage of Git, because it really helps with distributed workflows.
And another question, could you show us how to restore a previous commit on dev, or just talk us through it?
What do you mean? Do you mean like revert to a previous commit?
Sure.
So
that's not really in the plan for the demonstration, but we do have an excellent help desk article on targeting the tags that you want to revert to. So you'll need to use a local clone of your Git repository, but the instructions are there.
Yeah, you just find the hash, do a git reset hard in the hash, but we're not going into that detail. What have you done so far? You've added a content type.
Yep.
And what are you doing now?
I'm just making sure I'm going to log into this one.
You're logging into the test environment?
So I've added the content type. I've created the date field. There's a couple of more settings that we can mess with here. I don't want the label anywhere. The default date is going to be now. That's fine. And then relative plus. And
quick question as you're doing that. Maybe you can tell us just briefly best practices in using the workflow. There's a question around if data has been added to the live site or even the test site, how do you bring that down to the development environment?
All right, so we're going to do that very shortly. So I'm going to create that live environment real quick just to show you. And then go back to my development site right here. Now, if I want to get this content type available on my testing and my live environments, so that data can be entered in it, or if I want to change this content type once it's there, I'm going to have a problem. Now, we have an excellent help desk article. Where did it go? All right, help me.
Have to refresh that, maybe?
Yeah, I think this is the one. It might be. I'm killing Chrome.
Okay.
Or we can find the link and add it in.
Yeah, the link is there. Using the Pantheon workflow.
And there's a good video to kind of review some of this.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of the problem here is how do you handle configuration changes? Because if you have a live production site, you have new you're going to be adding content in the live site. But if you want to test, you're adding new features in dev and you want to be able to test on the production database, you can always pull that database back. But what's the problem you're trying to solve?
So the problem right here is that content type is in my database on my development environment, but it's not in my database on my testing or my live environment. Because when I cloned those, they were based on the development environment just after I had installed the base modules and enabled like the admin menu.
And you don't want to just push your database forward because that would overwrite everything in the live environment.
Right. We want our database to be where we just store our content, and we want to export our configuration to code. So looking back at this article, there are a couple ways to export your configuration using CTools exportables, using the features module, or the new kind of Drupal 8 way, also in Drupal 7, is to use the configuration management module. So going back to my terminal, I'm going to download the configuration management module. I will put up the project page from Drupal.org for you guys to look at while I do that.
So just to piggyback on what Brian was saying, you know, you saw him create the content type, add a few fields, and you could go ahead and do that manually again on test, and then you could do it manually again on live, but there's all sorts of risks involved with that. You know, there's human error. You could make a change you make on dev that you don't make on test, or you don't make it on live. So the idea is whenever you can, put your configuration into code. That way you can just push the code right up to test with one click. You can push it up to live with one click, and then you won't have to be doing a lot of those manual processes over and over again. So you'll see he's downloading the dev release, which is a lot more, it's from July 26th of 2014 versus the recommended release, which is over a year old. So he's specifying that he's downloading the dev version. It looks like it's not working because he's probably in Git mode.
Oh no!
So all we have to do is switch back into Sftp mode.
So since I'm at the command line, I can just type in drush psite cmode. This will give me a list of the sites that I have available to me, and the community event site is number 3. I can also supply the UUID as an argument, and then select the development environment, and then I want to switch it to Sftp mode. Now I could have just done that by a bunch of clicks, but since I'm at the command line, I like to do it this way. So now we're going to tap the up arrow twice, just download to that same environment, the configuration dev version, and it contains 2 modules, configuration UI and configuration. So I'm going to use drush again.
And I think you should be able to just enable configuration UI, and since it has a dependency on configuration, you should be set.
As long as I say en-y, configuration UI. All right, so let's see. Wow. So it also downloaded xAutoLoad, which was an unmet dependency for the configuration module.
Great. So it looks like those were enabled.
All right. So this is where the faster workflow is really going to come to bear. So I have my Drupal 7 site, I have my initial set of fields for this community event content type, and I want to get it to instant test. But first I need to go to Configuration, System, Configuration Management. And I'll notice that the default tab is this tracking tab. Now this will show a list of the configurations that are being tracked and stored in code for this environment. So right now on the not tracking tab, it's going to show me basically all of the configurations that are available for me to track. Now I could go through each one of these tabs and check each one of these, but I'm not going to do that. First and foremost though, I need to change in the Settings tab the configuration directory that the configs are stored in. The reason that I have to do this is because the default is site's default files config, which is not a directory that is tracked by Git. Right?
So we don't want it in the files directory.
Right.
Because that's on our Pantheon file system, which is not under version control.
Right.
We actually want this configuration in code. We want it versionable. So we're going to put it into sites all configs, which is under version control.
Yep. And then since this site is in Sftp mode, it knows it's going to write to the file system and create that configs directory. Now, going back to the not tracking, now the user interface way of doing this is to kind of go through all of these tabs and do this. But since I have Drush and I have my Drush aliases set up, I can write drush at pantheon.community events of CSTA all. Now what this is going to do is on my development environment, it's going to start tracking all of the configurations in one big bucket. So the feature space equivalent would be kind of to create one site feature and export all of your configuration to one individual module. So now I can go back to this interface, refresh, and I'll notice that now my not tracking is empty, and my tracking tab is full of all of the different configurations that I want to track.
Great.
Good. So now I can click right here, write active store to data store. So this is the same terminology that's being used in the Drupal 8 Content Management Initiative. And since I had set that settings, which is basically, I wonder if that works. The settings, this is where the data store is going to be, the site's all config. If I go back to my Pantheon dashboard on my development environment, I will show now that I have configuration, config. All right, wait, where'd they go?
I see site all configs, the second to last line there.
Okay, yeah, site all configs. So we have essentially a ton of configuration now exported to code so that I can migrate it from my dev to my test and then to my live environment, taking with it the fields, the field types, all of the settings that I need to track from one environment to the next.
This is great. So one thing that you might want to consider doing, just for time's sake, Brian kind of had one commit for all of this, but you might want to download the configuration module, commit that, and then when you do your first set of actually writing the configs to the data store, have that be a separate commit. That way, you're also not looking through all these files to try to figure out did it actually write to your data store.
Right. So best practices, not exactly following.
But that's okay because you can kind of see why you would want to separate things out and do a commit. Did this actually work?
Yeah. So I mean, to me, installing the configuration and exporting the initial configuration is kind of all doing one. Maybe if I hadn't created that first content type, because that's the second logical unit that we would want to commit to code. So now I've committed that to code. Once this is all done, this is where the wow factor.
So a question while that is loading. If someone uses a distribution that's not on the Pantheon platform, like Drupal Commons, would they still get benefits by using Pantheon, or would it not even work?
No, Drupal Commons will definitely run on Pantheon. Yeah, it'll definitely run on Pantheon. You're not going to quite have the same automated updates as you would with a distribution like Monopoly or Open Atrium, because those one-click updates on your dashboard are going to update not just the core, it'll update the whole distribution, all of the contributed modules. So when you're using Open Atrium on Pantheon, the one-click updates is going to be updating everything, whereas Drupal Commons isn't supported on Pantheon in that respect. The one-click updates will only update Drupal core. They won't update all the contributed modules.
So the method for doing that would be to start a site with Drupal 7 as your content, as your upstream, and then add in before you install your site? No?
I think you could do that, but I think if you import an existing Drupal Commons site, we'll actually swap out vanilla core with our customized core. So the Drupal core updates should still work.
Yeah.
So there's still a benefit for using the Pantheon platform?
And you can still use all of the tools that you have on the Pantheon workflow. Dev, test, and live. You can use you can push the code the same way. So you have the click backup. You know, all of those things.
Okay, so while we're waiting for this,
can you refresh it? Refresh the page. Yep, I do.
Someone steal my.
Ways to query data in MySQL.
Guys, stop stealing my AirPlay.
Yeah, there is a way to query data in MySQL. I don't think that Brian showed it, but on the dashboard you'll see a button there called Connection Info. Mm-hmm. If you click that, you'll get a MySQL comment. See that the MySQL credentials there? That'll let you connect to your MySQL database. That's going to be separate for dev, test, and live. So this one's for test. If you go to dev, you'll have a separate credentials, and you can use whatever tool you'd like to connect to your database.
So the last step is to commit my changes that I made in dev, all of that configuration, including those content types, pull those into test, but at the same time we have checkboxes here to run update.php, clear caches after pulling code, and pull the files and the database from the live environment.
Before you click that, can you just show that the state of the testing site right now, and show that we don't have that content type
Yeah,
there?
that's what I had here. So at the content types, I don't have the article or the basic page. Now,
all you have is article and basic page.
Yes, sorry. All I have are article and
So what happens when you apply that update?
Right, but my live environment also only has all of the same stuff here.
Okay.
So if that's all in the database, then basically if the testing environment had those content types and I pulled that database down, it would overwrite all of that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to pull that. And I know we're running short on time, so this is the...
Well, this is the climax of the webinar here, pulling in the configuration into test, and let's see what happens.
Wait for it to deploy the code.
So here we're copying we're copying in the code from test, and we're bringing in the database from live. So those two meet in the test environment. You have a fresh database from production, and you have the most current code from development.
Question, what is the best way to do theming and design on a browser using the Pantheon server instead of a local LAMP stack? For example, writing adjusting code locally and needing to push it to the server to see the changes on the site on a frequent basis. Should we be using Git, or what's the best practice there?
You can use whatever you'd like, really. If you'd like to keep it in Sftp mode and adjust your styles and reload them in the browser, you'll be able to do that. Git's really important if you're working with a team, because if you keep your site in Sftp mode, things can get messy quickly. So when you commit things off into version control, that just helps you work with the team. So whatever your needs are with your team. So what's going on here? What did I miss?
I don't know. It's not deployed yet.
Oh, it's still deploying the code?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to interact with the site before it's ready. And I don't think it's refreshed because the module is not available to enable. We'll try that.
So we only have 2 minutes left. Anything else you think people should know?
Well, I think that the code is deployed, so I want to actually look at it and see what we have.
Where is the module?
You have to enable the module.
Yeah, I know.
Did you enable it?
It's not available.
Did you clear your caches?
I think so.
And just as a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be available on our website later today, and we'll also send a link to the recording out to anybody who registered for the webinar.
Where is it? Huh.
Did you have a tab selected where you were searching not all of the...
I'm just searching all.
Are you searching all?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be right up here.
Well,
yeah, very odd.
I guess we can look and we can connect to Sftp and see if it's actually, the code has been deployed or not.
In the test environment? Yeah, let's do that.
This is kind of what sometimes happens with live demos, but you can see, you know, the basic workflow of how this works. If you have a few more minutes, I think we can probably just keep going here and see how to resolve this type of problem, because, you know, development, you'll run into challenges and you need to figure out how to get through them.
Sure, and if you need to drop off, we will have a recording, so we'll make sure we keep the recording going until this is resolved so that you can see how it works out.
A lot of times we'll just kind of demonstrate the basic workflow, and Brian's been pretty ambitious in you know, actually building a real site with a real content type, so let's see what happened.
It looks like the code didn't deploy. So I connected by Sftp in my terminal to my test environment, so appserver.test here. And then I changed directories to code, sites, all modules, ls, and I don't see it. Do
you want to show our status page real quick?
Yes. Where is my... So we have pantheonstatus.com or status.getpantheon.com.
So this might be updated in the next minute or two to show that we have degraded dashboard operations. It could be.
With Ari and myself investigating an issue that we were having with the workflow. Basically, we committed a change. This one right here, install configuration management module and export initial configuration. We committed that to the dev environment, and when we pulled it into test, the configuration management module just was not there. We submitted a support ticket, so here at the support tab, I've got a ticket associated with this environment. That code deploy failed during our live webinar. Basically described very clearly what I did, how I know that the code deploy did fail, because I was able to use my connection information in the test environment, which I'll look at in a second, and then in the terminal, change directory to code, sites, all modules, and then ls to list all of the directories inside of that directory. The configuration and the xAuto load modules were not available in the test environment, and the dashboard was indicating that they were. So Ricky followed up and said that they're investigating it now and that I can use the status page, status.getpantheon.com, to confirm. This is status.getpantheon.com. Very shortly after, I'll go to my preview here. This yellow bar showed up above the site, the dashboard, with a link to the degraded dashboard operations status. So if I scroll down to yesterday, we see degraded dashboard operations. They were investigating when Ricky responded. Engineering fixed the problem, and then we collectively kind of apologized for any inconvenience. Now, the push was there. Basically, I went into the back end and was able to converge the site, and then everything was great. So I'll close this. I'll go to my test environment to just quickly show how to, I did yesterday, I think, actually, just the Sftp. I was able to just kind of go into here, paste that in, Sftp, and then I cd sites all modules, and this is on the test environment. Cd code sites all modules, and then ls, and I should see a listing of all my modules, including this configuration module and the requirement dependency x autoload. So now I know my test environment has that, and here the test environment. I've already gone in and enabled that module. So system, I have the configuration management module working. And since then, I've created a contact information field collection on the community events content type. I did that in dev, I committed it to dev, and I pulled that into test. So my test environment, structure, content types, community event, if I click there, content types, community event, manage fields, I have a contact field type, which is the field collection that this commit describes my having made. So now I'm going to just quickly add another one. We're going to say, you know, our community events, we want to add some other kind of field. So I know that we have a location. You know, all of these community events happen somewhere, and we're just going to make that text field, and then leave it as a text field widget. So the location for, you know, DrupalCamp LA might be UC Irvine. The location for DrupalCon Austin that just passed was the Austin Convention Center. So I'm a little bit late for something right now, but we're going to press on. So plain text, we're going to leave the size of the text field at 60 characters. That's fine. Enter location information that Google Maps will understand. So we're going to save those settings. I'm going to go back to this just to see if I have the simple Gmap module, which I don't. So now back here, let's close this. So now my site's all modules on my development site has simple Gmap. So now if I run that again and just en-y simple Gmap, I'll be able to enable it. It says, do I really want to continue? Yes, of course I do. And now on the Manage Display tab for this content type, I should be able to, on this location, give it a Google map from a one-line address. I can also change some settings and say that that's going to be too small, let's make it twice as big. Give it a link to the map. Update. Save. So this is some fun and basic site building. But now in my configuration, system configuration management, I should have a new field in my not tracking. Yes, I do. So I have field location used in community event. So I'm going to start tracking that field and its configuration. Good. I'll go to my tracking, and I'm going to write my active store to my data store so I can verify that I'm tracking that field location right there. Write my active store to my data store. And now this is going to commit some code. Going to show me that I have some code changes ready. I've got Sybil Gmap and I've got a field tracked. Right, sites all configs right here. And my tracked file is also going to have a change in it. So add location field to community events content type and install simple Gmap. Let's see something here. Field URL, community event. Did the community event content type? Yeah, it changed, okay. So now I'm going to commit that. I'm going to go to my test environment. I'm not going to pull my database from the live environment because that's going to overwrite some things that I want to pull in and change right now. So I'm going to hit click, pull code from development, and now this is done. I need to go to my configuration system and synchronize. Now I can either basically just click this Synchronize Configurations button, or I can type in drush at pantheon.community events.test and then CSYN. Enter. So there might be some errors that come up just basically saying I don't have write permissions in that directory config, which I don't. The test environment does not have any write permissions available to it, but in the settings here on my configuration, I should also have this say that this is a remote server, which I guess it doesn't. So on my test environment, now we're going to wait. This will show up very shortly. Basically, it's synchronizing the data store, which is, and all of those errors are the same. It's synchronizing the data store with the active store. So it's writing that code to the database. And now I see that my field location is in sync and being tracked. And if I go to structure, content types, community event, I'll see that I have a location field here. So now if I add a community event,